All right, here we go. Chapter 19, The Storytellers. Roz and the children had a new routine. Several times a week, they'd gather beneath the oak tree, and Roz would tell stories about the robot on the island. The children loved hearing how the robot survived mudslides and bear attacks and harsh winter weather. They loved hearing how she befriended the island animals. But the stories they loved most were about the robot and her son, the goose. He sounded like such a nice goose. Roz told the children story after story after story. What she didn't tell them, what she couldn't tell them, was that the stories were true, and they were about her. The children wanted to get in on the storytelling fun. Jaya told adventure stories about dragons and monsters. Jad told silly stories about aliens in outer space. But as the children grew more comfortable with Roz, they began talking about their own lives. They talked about growing up way out in the country. They talked about their schoolmates and their friends and their family. They talked about how their parents used to work together around the farm and how perfect everything was before the accident. In an instant, their lives were upended. Their mother was gone and their father was injured. Mr. Sharif tried to keep the farm going by himself, but there was so much to do, and he was so weak now. The farm machines powered along, doing their job as usual, but they needed to be maintained and monitored. Eventually the machines started breaking down, and the farm started falling to pieces. The children wondered if life would ever feel normal again. "That's why we got you, Roz," said the girl. "We needed you to save this place." "And that's exactly what you're doing," said the boy with a smile. Chapter 20, The Wild Animals. Wildlife can be very good for farmland. Insects pollinate the plants, snakes eat the pests, the droppings of rodents and birds and every other animal act as a natural fertilizer. Roz wanted more of those helpful creatures on the farm, so she let the unused sections of land go wild. Up from the ground emerged native weeds, flowers, woody brambles, and with the wild plants came wild animals. But then some creatures came skulking around who were not helpful at all. It started when Roz noticed a heavy scent floating on the breeze. She followed the scent out to a narrow strip of forest on the edge of the property. There were clumps of fur in the undergrowth and claw marks in the dirt. There was blood, too. Lots of it. And then she found the carcass. A deer had recently been killed and eaten. The robot's head slowly spun around as she scanned the area. Not far from the carcass was a pile of droppings. It looked like it might have come from a dog, but Oscar wasn't large enough or ferocious enough to kill a deer. What kind of animal could have done this? Roz began standing there at the edge of the property for a while. She imagined Mr. Sharif in his office, sitting at his computer, eyeing her location on the map. Any minute now he would hobble out to his truck and come racing down the driveway to check on her. Roz didn't want to upset the man, so she left the carcass where it was and returned to her work. But from then on, she kept a careful watch for any more signs of trouble. Chapter 21, The Howl. It wasn't long before Roz found more signs of trouble. Furry faces poking out from the bushes, musky smells lingering in the fields, silhouettes trotting through the moonlight. And then one night she heard it, the long, menacing howl of a wolf. Chapter 22, The Wolves. The attack happened at dusk. 7 beastly shapes bounded over the fence and into the pasture. Old Annabelle had wandered off from the herd, and now she made an easy target. The herding machine saw the wolves coming and rolled in their direction, but the hunters were clever. They split up, darted past the clunky machine, and surrounded their target. The wolf pack was led by a large male. His name was Shadow, and it was easy to see why. He was quick and quiet and covered in dark fur. except for a long, pale scar that streaked across his body like a comet. Shadow locked eyes with the cow, distracting her with his fierce gaze, and when his pack was in position, he said, "Attack!" The wolves lunged, snapping their jaws at the cow's skinny legs. Annabelle kicked and hollered, "Stay away from me, you brutes!" She was a big animal, but the wolves knew what to do. They kept biting her, kept taunting her, kept wearing her down. I've got a visitor here. Let's see if I can turn this. Coco. I don't know if you can see her. Nope, probably not. Here she is. There's Coco. The herd watched from afar. They cried out to their friend. They wanted to help, but they were too frightened to move. Well, reader, you can guess who came to the rescue. Footsteps thundered across the pasture, and Roz leaped into the fight. Had she swung her fists or kicked her feet, the wolf pack might have fled. But the robot wasn't programmed to be violent. All she could do was awkwardly defend the cow. Roz felt teeth chomping her arm. She felt claws slashing her chest. Her pain sensors flared and she howled, "Leave us alone!" The robot's booming voice startled the wolves, and in that instant she pried one of them away. Then Annabelle landed a hard kick, and another wolf tumbled backward into the grass. More help was coming. The other cows had finally found their courage, and the angry herd was on the march. The wolves had missed their chance. Shadow gave a frustrated grunt, and the pack retreated. They dashed through the pasture, leaped over the fence, and disappeared into the trees. The robot activated her headlights, and shafts of light beamed out from her eyes. While the herd crowded around, Roz carefully examined Annabelle's injuries. "I need to clean and dress those wound bites," said the robot, "but you will be okay." "Of course I'll be okay," the cow panted. "I'm old, but I'm feisty. Those wolves don't scare me." Annabelle talked tough, but there was no mistaking the fear in her eyes. All the cows were afraid. They knew that if the wolves attacked again, the next victim might not be so fortunate. Chapters 23, The Rifle.